This is Sarah Heredia, and you are listening to the Freely You podcast. Our time together is meant to inspire you to think bigger and empower you to live your life in a way that makes you proud to be you. I believe that the only box you should fit in is the one that you build for yourself, and I'm here to help you lay the foundation. My journey has taught me that we all deserve to create our own definition of success while meeting ourselves with love and a playful curiosity. My goal is to provide practical tools and fresh perspectives so you can rewrite your story, start living your life on purpose, and ultimately become more freely you. All right. Hello and welcome back. Today I have a very special guest here with me. I have a dear friend of mine, Angel Rockwell. Hello, Angel. How are you?
Hello, I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yes, I am excited too. So I asked Angel to come on here and share just her experience with motherhood. And so Angel is a healer. She's a mother of two herself. She is a spirit channel, and she is the host of the Wild Mama podcast. And so I met Angel, and I was actually correct me if I'm wrong, Angel, but I feel like it was 2021. It hasn't been an incredible amount of time. But the interesting thing about our relationship is that I met Angel through community in master classes and masterminds. And it's a very interesting way to meet people because there is no small talk. It's like straight to the point. Like, here's my deepest, darkest fear. Here's my biggest dream. Like, here's how I get in the way of myself all the time. And you're literally just like pouring your heart out. And so that was my first interaction with Angel, was really getting to know her on a soul level, and same for her, for me, I believe. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I love that. And so we've kept the relationship going. And the beauty of it is that I don't talk to Angel all the time. But when I do, it's like we don't miss a beat, and there is no small talk. And I'm just excited. I think that I believe that we're always guided to the people that are meant to be in our lives. And whether that's for a connection, for a lesson, to hold up the mirror for one another, there's always a reason. And I know that Angel is no exception in that. And recently I have been just feeling called to have this conversation with Angel because, as you're going to hear, I would say that Angel lives her life. And you would say this too, Angel, I believe. So I'm not trying to
I trust you.
Okay.
You can go all in. Just say it.
But you generally do live your life differently than most people. And you are not afraid to own that and claim that. And the way that I see you living your life that is very admirable to me is that you're extremely present, especially in your motherhood. You're not afraid to slow down, and you're not afraid to challenge just the way that we've always done things, and decide and choose for you and your family to do what feels right for you rather than what society has told us is right.
Yes.
And so that's big, and that's bold, and that's brave, and I really admire that about you. So I just want to share that with you.
I appreciate that. It's nice to be seen for who I am to be. I think there are so many other people in this world that don't. And people that are really close to me, even like family, who don't see me with the clarity that you do. And that's why I love you and appreciate you so much. Because it's
Uh-oh. You stop. I can't hear you.
Oh, we're back. He pushed the mute button.
Okay.
It's why the buttons always have to glow. The children just want to
Yeah.
yeah, it feels really delicious just to be seen for who I know I am to be, because so many people come, and I'm sure we'll get into this as well, and it comes so much into motherhood, that in how we view ourselves and how we approach life and how we frame up what's possible and what we can see in people. And a lot of the time what we see is not the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we only allow ourselves to see certain things, and we can be very close-minded, right? Because we see things our way a lot of the time. And I think that's what's been really interesting to me. So when I first met you, you have two children. Your son is, you just told me, 17 months.
Yeah.
And how old is Ophelia now?
She's 5 3/4.
5 3/4. So I feel like when I met you, she had to be like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And
She was just about, oh yeah, she was just about 3. Yeah.
okay. And so you just do things differently. And I remember like one of the first calls that I met Ophelia, like you just had Ophelia on the call. And honestly, like for me coming from like corporate America, like I was like, oh, like, wow, she has her kid on the tape, like it was this very like foreign thing that you just had your kid with you there. And that is how you live your life. Like your son is on your lap right now, and like you just incorporate your kids into everything that you do. And I want to dive into that a lot deeper, because I don't, that is not the norm. And I think that that's another thing that society has told us, like, this isn't the way. And I know that's a lot of the work that you're doing right now is really about like healing that mother-child bond and reframing the way that we look at motherhood and our connection with our children. And so that is why I brought you on today, to dive into all of that. And yeah, when I tell you that Angel and I have real conversations, that is the truth. You're hear that here today. When I sent Angel kind of an overview of what we would talk about, her response was, damn woman, we are getting into it. And we are, because I think that some of the things that we're going to talk about could be considered like sticky subjects, if you will, or like, almost like a divide in motherhood, like you do it this way and I do it this way, and what's right and what's wrong. And what I want and my hope out of this conversation is that we can see that you and I are very much alike, even though we do things differently. I think that a lot of times we have the same intention, but we're not necessarily going about it the right way, and so, or the same way. So that's where this conversation is going. And so I really wanted to talk to you, Angel, because so Angel homeschools, um, and you have a baby on your hip nearly at all times, right? And so is this the way that you were raised? Were you raised where your parents were super hands-on like that, and like the attention was all about the children in your household? Tell me a little bit about your childhood, Angel.
It's so funny. Basically, since you just super small side note, basically, since you've invited me on to do this podcast with you, Ophelia's been asking me before bed every night to tell her about my childhood.
Mm.
Really interesting, and a very emotional process for me as well. And also one little thing. Yes, technically I homeschool. We'll get into other things as well, but I don't like to use that term because I don't welcome this energy of school systems or that government regulation in my home whatsoever. I like to say that I cultivate an inspired environment for learning.
I love that. I love it.
Oh, that's his new favorite word right now as well. But to my childhood, no, absolutely not. This is not the environment that I grew up in. Hey, where even to begin on that one? You've given me this question prior, and I think I'm just going to go with the flow and what spirit calls me to start sharing here. Not only was this not the environment that I grew up in, I actually lived away from home from the age of 10 to 14 in private school, and I didn't live with my family at all. I just came home on weekends. It was a professional ballet school, so I lived away from my parents. So it was, and the age of 10 is very young. You're still a child at that age. But prior to that, I guess it was my mom left work to be home with us, I think when I was 3, if I remember that correctly. But she was working. It was the way things were at the time. You got your, was it 17 weeks or something of mat leave in Canada at the time, and she went back to work, and I think she wanted to be home, but my parents just got to a point where they just needed the money, and that's what they decided to do. Was my mom went back to work and my dad had his accounting practice, and then things changed and she was able to, kind of step back again. She did go back to work again. It was just kind of, she was in and out. She was lucky, I guess, that she was able to, for those watching on video, you can see my face. She was lucky, I guess, that she was able to step in and out of her job that way. But no, my childhood, when I think of like the memories that stand out. My husband and I were talking about this the other day. My parents weren't there. It was, you know, the memories that are there, it's of friends or babysitters, and like terrible babysitter experiences. You know, like one babysitter left me alone on the front porch of my house because my mom wasn't home yet. And my mom came home and I was crying because I had to pee so bad. And I'd probably peed my pants at that point. I don't remember. You know, and like being left out in the cold at another babysitter's house because she had to watch her soap operas. And, you know, my parents would find out about these things and then pull us and we'd find a new one. But they're, so that, I think that's a really typical childhood of my age, you know, being bounced around from babysitter to babysitter. I was in public school. I don't remember much about it. It wasn't pivotal or monumental for me at all. And you did ask a question later, so we can maybe jump into the school system on another note. It wasn't like this. I think it's been really hard. It's been a big challenge for me in my adult life to recognize that my mother wasn't really the mother that all of us want to have, which is just to be loved and to be held and to be present with. It's in my adult life, I see my parents as they're very non-changing people. They are who they are. They'll tell you that. They're like, we like who we are. We don't want to change. And that's not new. So if this is who they are now, that's who they were then. You know, that I can put two and two together. I have a very smart, logical mind. And then to reframe, to look back and say, okay, well, these few select memories I have of my childhood, and you're aware as well that I had a repressed sexual trauma come into my adult awareness from when I was 5, that just because I was doing the work that I was doing and my husband and I were doing the work in our marriage and my life became a safe enough space for me to see my past for what it was. But that was really challenging too, to understand how that could possibly have happened with the parents who I thought that they were. And it's not about demonizing my parents, or they did the best they could. And we hear that a lot. And my husband hates when I say that. And I'm not a fan of the phrase either. That also was something that just became accepted. Well, they're doing the best they can. That's just the way it is. But if you're telling people you're doing the best you can, you know, are you really, like, sometimes you just need a slap in the face and say, like, you're not doing the best that you can. And that's okay. But being willing to be honest and say, like, I can do better. I can be better. Because at the end of the day, it's just you and your satisfaction. How satisfied are you with your day? Do you feel like you're a good mother? Do you know that you're a good mother? Do you lay your head on your pillow at the end of the day, just like, oh, so deeply satisfied and in love and bliss with your day because it was just magic? And even though your kid cried and maybe he bit your boob and maybe, like, who knows what happened? Like, all these things can happen, but there's still that deep satisfaction that can underlie that. And I know my mother didn't have that. She doesn't have it now. You know, I mean, we could, my relationship with my mother is a whole other podcast series. I love her. And the access to information was always there. I think that's another narrative that we're told, but we just have access to so much more now. And that's just BS. We've always had access to anything in the universe that we want. We've just been told that you don't, from so many different avenues. And so, yeah, so my childhood was very solitary. I think I do have memories of, you know, playing with my brother and, you know, doing certain things. My brother's about 2 years older than I am. So we grew up really close in my memory. And I haven't spoken to my brother. I haven't seen my brother since 2017. And I haven't spoken to him in, well, probably just as long. And I would love to have a relationship with my brother, but he's in a different area where he's kind of said, you know, I don't want this relationship with you. I'm a very triggering person for a lot of people. And I know you even said in your email that you were triggered by some of the things that I post. And I love when people feel triggered by me. I love it even more when they take responsibility that they're the one triggered by me, that I'm not the one triggering them, because that's a really big differentiation to make that is tough. So I guess to segue back to my childhood, it was, I think I was about 5 and I started like speaking to people and they were like, oh, like she's talking. Like nobody really knew I had a voice before I was 5. And that's the story that I'm told by my parents. I don't have that recollection other than just a story from them. And I don't like, I was not like this. I was not outspoken. None of this. I remember when I hit 17, making a conscious choice to like just be myself and start like wearing the clothes, like really wearing the clothes that I want to wear and walking my own path, instead of, the year before I was wearing like backwards baseball caps and baggy jeans because we're going back to like late 90s, early 2000s here. That was cool. And then all of a sudden I was like dyeing my hair blonde and wearing bright pink floral mini skirts with like geometric teal tops and like things that didn't match, felt really good. And just, yeah, or not, maybe not banging those. You've got the gemstones right now. So 17, I remember that being like a really pivotal point for me but childhood, yeah, it was very quiet. It was very solitary, even when I moved away and gone to ballet school. All right, we're gonna just take a moment. Oh, my. Authentic moment in the life of mama. It's all right. No, we like to bang the rocks. That's all right. Okay, we're just not gonna do that now. I was very he's a lot more. Will you hey, let's excuse me. Let's excuse me. Let's excuse me. I don't want to do that. You got to see Ophelia when she was little, and she was not as like big and bold. This little man's got a big old voice, and he's used it since even in my belly. I remember I used to talk to him like every night when I was pregnant. We had all kinds of chats.
So that's impressive that you kind of made that decision for yourself at 17, because that's, I mean, I waited till I was like 30. So that is really impressive that you were like, I'm going to choose something different for myself now, and I'm going to lean into who I am and find my
I've done it
voice.
numerous times since. It wasn't the only time, and it wasn't the only lean in, and I don't think it'll be the last either.
Totally.
But it gets easier. It's like it's less drastic. You're like, oh, a little off course. I'm gonna lean in a little more, but I'm kind of here already. Yeah, 17 was definitely a big moment of just looking around and being like, what am I doing? This doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like me at all.
Yeah. So how much of the way that you parent do you feel like is in a response to your childhood? Like, did you, before you became a mother, were you like, I'm going to do the exact opposite of that? Or is this just how it's come naturally to you?
It has come naturally to me, and I think that's just a beautiful part of my magic. I will own that. And the way I viewed my childhood and how my parents parented me has been a really big shift as well in my spiritual journey, and just recognizing that I am a spiritual being living in a physical body, and I'm here to create magic and enjoy the time that I'm here. So the way that I view, like when I first wanted to have children, I was like 19 and I was like, oh, I want to have kids. And at that time, I probably would have said I wanted to be like my parents. Because of the way I viewed them, the lens that I had on at the time. And then I got into a relationship, went on for 10 years. I was married previously. And inside that marriage, I didn't want to have kids. It wasn't something that we really talked about. We were still young, and not really, but we were young. And then when that really started falling apart, I shifted, like, I don't want to have kids. Like, what a mess that I just knew this would be such a bigger hurdle to get over if children were involved. So it just kind of shifted me into like, I don't want kids. Maybe not never, but just it wasn't a mindset for me at all. And then I met my husband, and we were both just hot messes when we met. It's kind of how we connected. We were like, there's no future for us. We're just hot messes. Let's just hang out. And we were both on the same page, like no kids, not doing it. His parents were just recently divorced. I was in the process of getting divorced myself at the time where I met my husband. And so we were just like, no, there was like no strings attached for us, but we were good on that. And then it took me getting pregnant to come back to wanting to have children. That was another just like click moment. My husband's like, you're pregnant, your boobs are big. I was like, I'm not pregnant. And then I took a test, and that was like that moment in The Wizard of Oz, if you've seen the movie, when it goes from black and white to Technicolor, where the world just all of a sudden was like, ha, this is your life. And I felt like a woman for the first time in my life when I took that pregnancy test. And so much of the stuff that I had been clouded with and was concerned about, like, who am I? What do I do? I'd just been fired from a job that I thought was my whole trajectory, and I was gonna, like, the whole thing got fired, and that whole community, that whole job, everything was gone. And I was trying to find myself again. And then pregnancy test was positive, and I just knew who I was, not in mind, but I felt it. And then I miscarried that baby, and that's a whole other, tangent of story too. But so in all of that, every step of that process, the reason why I went on that whole little tangent was at each kind of point in that journey, my perception of how my childhood was has shifted. Because when I started integrating in like in body and sensation and like wisdom, knowing who I am as a mother, it was very much in contrast to what I had experienced as a child. So that really opened up a lot for me. And again, was of course, interestingly enough, just talking about this the other day, that in terms of parenting, most people look at it that way. They look at their past and they say, well, my parents did this and I loved it. Or my parents did this and I love that, so I want to be just like them. Or my parents did this and I hated it, I don't want to be like that at all. And then they choose from that foundation. It's such a rocky foundation, and it's also rooted in the past, and it has nothing to do with our children. It has everything to do with us and our inability to let go. And I'm not sure what you want here right now, Bubby boy. Sometimes he wants to stand and drink milk these days too. So I'm just gonna do a little warrior two position here. He's standing on a stool, and this will be pleasant. Both of those, I'm just gonna flat out say both of those are wrong. Both of those are incorrect. And I felt that. And actually my husband and I were in marriage counseling years ago, and we had a counselor say this to us, that most people parent one of two ways. One, they love what their parents did, they try to replicate, or two, they dislike what their parents did, they try to do what they perceive to be the opposite. And the correct way, in her mind, in my experience, I will say this is truth, is to look at your child, to be present with them, and listen to what they need. It has nothing to do with you. You're here, and you're the adult, and what do you want your relationship with your children to be like? What do you want to cultivate? What's your vision for your family? What's your vision for your relationship? I think my husband and I, we have been given a very diverse and overflowing buffet of, of opportunities with our parents to see what it is that we want to become. I mean, even still to this day, like we neither my husband or I, and he's a blessing to me to have that sounding board for conversation. We don't have the relationship with our parents at all that we want. At the end of it, all we want is to he keeps clicking the mute button. Hey, Bubby, I can't have you touching that right now, my love. We have that little child in us, and we just want to be loved. We want to feel like they want us. I think in both of our wounds from our past, we have the feelings of not being wanted. There's a lot of neglect and manipulation and abuse, really, and very freely speaking these things, knowing that my parents will probably never listen to this podcast. But even if they did, my mother-in-law might. I'm tired of not just speaking the truth about it, and also having to be okay. Like, you didn't know, you weren't. I know that my parents weren't waking up every day being like, we're going to not show up for our kids. We're going to give them we're going to treat them poorly. Like, that wasn't them, like in their minds at the time, they did the best that they could. And that's a beautiful thing, because it's given me, so I'll stop referring to him, much as we've been talking about it so much lately. It's given us the opportunity to make different choices. It's given us the opportunity to break the cycles, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what you said that I think was just like profound is that we do make our motherhood is so much about us. It's so much about our childhood. It's so much about, the expectation that we put on ourselves of the type of parent that we want to be. And at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about our kids. It's about their needs, which are probably not even the same as ours. and adjusting to that and to who they need us to be, not who we need them to be. And I see that. I think that that's something that a lot of parents get stuck on, is like needing their kids to be a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way. And yeah, it's our expectation, and that's not fair to them.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. It's one of the principles of, like, one of the biggest pieces of the foundation of how I parent is that I'm here to guide you to be you.
Yeah.
And I say this to my daughter all the time, and it applies to everything. If you have to use that much force, it's not in alignment. Something's out of whack. And that goes for Lego, trying to get a zipper done up, and relationships and conversations. It applies to everything. And it's it drives my husband a little bit nuts from time to time, because my children are wild and free. I allow them to do what they want. And the difference in that is just like, it's total anarchy over there. It's chaos. You can't just let them run around and eat bonbons all day and throw their poo on the wall. Like, that's not what's happening around here, because I allow my children to do what they want. I don't allow them to do things that are out of alignment with who they are, because I know that they don't, I know that they want to live healthy, happy lives. I know, and that's where the guidance comes in. And it's a really fine, it's a really delicate differentiation to make in allowing your kids to do what they want and allowing your kids to do what they think they want. Because what they think they want is influenced by, like, well, her up the street has an iPhone and I want an iPhone. Do you want an iPhone? No kid wants a fucking iPhone. Sorry.
Oh, the F-bomb.
This is not, it's also not an Apple thing. I'm not Apple. I'm a Samsung person. Regardless, it's not a brand thing. It's like, what children want is to be happy. It's what we all want. Like, we all have that child in us. Like, what do you want right now? You want to be happy. You want to be free. You want to be satisfied. You want to be able to do what the frick you want.
Yeah.
I also have it. The frick comes out. That's what we all want. So why on earth would we as parents think that we can raise our children to not do what they want, not have that way what they want, not be accepted for what they want, not be appreciated for what they want, and somehow in that magic of dysfunction, grow up to be somebody who has a mind for critical thinking, or the ability to know what they want, and the ability to stand up for themselves in tough times when you need to stand for where you're required to have a backbone,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
it's convenience for the parents. It's like, well, I want this and you're getting in the way. And that's one of my biggest triggers in parenting is seeing children be blamed. And I honestly don't think there's any mother out there saying it's your fault that my life is shit. But in essence, that's what's happening. They're like, I had a stressful day. Like, the kids were too much. It was so stressful. Like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm anxious. And it's all because it all comes down to you're blaming your kids. You can't handle your kids and you're making it their problem. The kids are stressing me out, or, I mean, there's a myriad of excuses that could be used. I don't make them, so maybe I can't reiterate them properly. But, if we're unhappy, if we're stressed or anxious as mothers, it's not our kids' fault. It's going back to, like, taking responsibility for your triggers, right? He really wants to push that mute button so bad. I want to push the mute button. You can't push the mute button, and a piece of my magic is I'm able to really pick up on the energy of people, and I'm really able to just see them. Not for the face they have on, not for the clothes that they're wearing, and not for any of that, like, to see them, especially in motherhood, like with their children. I can feel that so powerfully. And sometimes it's tough because I see who they're trying to be and I know who they are. And I know who they are because I'm a mother. Every single woman on the planet is a mother, whether she chooses to step into it or not. Like, I'm not saying every woman has to go and procreate, because that's her choice and not mine, of course, but that's who she is. You can't deny that. It's just like, it's just like anything else, it's like, oh, they're a beautiful painter, like, but they're doing computer programming. Like, they are an artist. They are a painter. They just haven't stepped into it. It's the motherhood is no different. And every single woman's a mother. They just haven't stepped into it. And when you have this, and I know it also to be true because I experienced it with my parents. It's like, I've always, oh man, have I been the fucking problem in my family, and flat out been told, like, Angel, you can't say that. You can't say that. You can't act like that. You can't be that way. Like
Mhm.
numerous times, like my mother's in tears. And my intention was to just open up an honest conversation and talk to her and like maybe hug her and have her hold me and be like, daughter, I love you, you know? And all of a sudden she's crying and I'm the bad guy because she can't own her shit, really. And it's tough. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be. So yeah, in my past, I don't want to be that. But I don't want to be that because it sucks because I'm her daughter. And I don't want to be that also from the present because that's not what my daughter came here for. She didn't come here for me to project my stuff onto her and to not be able to be in this present moment and forget yesterday and just own today. Like our children are such beautiful examples of that. You know, I'm fun to say they're crying and they're upset because, you know, the dog stole their muffin, which happens sometimes around here. And then all of a sudden, like, it's okay, you know, you hold them. You don't need to logically explain to them what happened. They just want the love, and you hold them and you kiss them, and then they're like, you're running down off to play the next. They're not holding on to that. They're not going to bed being like, oh my God, it was so hard today. The dog ate my muffin and it was brutal and I cried and all these feelings are still here. They just let them out.
Yeah.
Them out. And again, we haven't been taught to do that. You know,
Yeah.
like, hold your feelings in. I don't care. I've cried in grocery stores. You know, like it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna wait till I get home. I mean, you know, there are some things like sometimes you know you need a really good ugly cry, and like you can let a few tears out in public, and then you know you're gonna go home and ugly cry with your. I ugly cry with my kids. You know, I know there's uh, yes, my love. Okay, then can you navigate that on your own, please, my love? There's somebody brought this up in a conversation. I feel like it was you, but we haven't spoken, so it must not have been you. There's like a Sex and the City movie, I think, when like Charlotte, like she's freaking out and her kids, mommy, 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 and she like hides in the closet and cries. Um, mothers everywhere do that. They're like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm scared, like, and they'll shut the door and think, it's okay, you can do that. And it is okay, you can do that. And do you want to do that? Is that the life that you want? Because I promise you this, when you're sitting in that closet crying alone, or the bathroom, let's face it, it's usually the bathroom, crying alone, you don't feel good. Where do you want to be in that scenario? You want to be with your kids and you want to be happy.
So how much of the processing of your childhood you feel like you did before becoming a mother versus after you became a mother? Like, do you feel like it really came to light after, or were you already aware of it?
Yes, so much yes. After 100%. I think I got pregnant in 2017 when that was a miscarried pregnancy. And I yeah, I hadn't at all. I hadn't even it was 2017 coincidentally that I realized I had zero connection to spirit whatsoever. I grew up in a religious home, not overly like I went to Lutheran church and I all called the lazy Christians. There was no
Yes.
like condemnation for anything. I was just like, you're here, yay. I liked going to church for the reason I got to sing. I really like to sing. So that was kind of my favorite part of going to church and being together as a family. Like that's what I love the most. That I was with my family. We did something together. My dad, he's an entrepreneur. He had his own accounting practice for years. My grandparents also entrepreneurial, had their own business. My dad and his brother stepped into like he was very busy. Wasn't around I think it's one of his biggest regrets is not being around a lot, worked late nights, didn't take vacation, stuff like that. My father and I have a more openly communicative relationship than my mother and I do. But yeah, that was a segue. I lost my track a little bit. This was all about processing before or after or after uh, motherhood. Yeah, I think I didn't resonate with religion in the way it had been presented to me. And spirituality hadn't presented itself to me in a way that I could connect with, source, God itself in a way that really felt good. That didn't come to me until I got pregnant and this channel just opened and it was just, the light shone down from the heavens and started illuminating everything. There's like a big tractor beam just shining around on my light still to this day. It's like, oh, that. Oh, some of them are yay, and some of them are, oh no, that's there. Yikes. That really, that was a shifting point for my spirit, my access to spirituality for sure. And my access to spirituality was definitely my safety for being able to process what my childhood was and what it wasn't. And really come back to like what we all want it to be, going back to that crying in the closet. I'm never going to tell anybody, especially any mother, like what she needs to get through a day. But where I stand and what I know is that no mother needs to cry. No mother needs to feel about herself the way that she does, where her only option is to cry alone in the closet. Because I know that no mother wants to think of their child feeling that way alone, crying alone. We don't want that for our kids, but we show them that. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay. Yes, it's okay. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I
Like,
agree. Do you think that we're like so scared to show, like you said, you ugly cry in front of your kids? And I cry in front of my kids too, because it's like we're human. And I think for a lot of parents, men or women, I think that they take on the role of like the protector and they have to be really strong. And a lot of times that doesn't include showing emotion, right? It's like dealing with everything on your own. But what are you teaching your kids then? Then you're not talking about your feelings, you're not expressing yourself. You're not being true to yourself in a lot of moments because you're pushing down whatever it is that you're feeling. And
mm,
our kids are learning from our behavior, right?
yeah. And we all know this to be true. You don't remember what somebody said, but you remember how they made you feel.
Mm-hmm.
We all know this. Everybody says it. But look at your kids. Everybody's out there trying to explain everything to them, but it's got to be this way, and you have to do that way, and you have to learn it that way, and da da da. Like they're always explaining, they're justifying, they're explaining everything, and their kids just feel the energy. You could be saying, you could be explaining the most profound concept and the most eloquent, beautiful words, and if what you're being at the time is just a big ball of fear, that's all they're getting. That's
Mm-hmm.
all they're getting. And even up to age 7, or maybe even age 8, energetically, our children are us. Like their chakras, their energetic centers are not different than ours. They are us. So it's not they're just feeling us, like they are experiencing what we're experiencing. And again, we haven't been taught this. And to say like, oh, this is all new. I would say like I'm the like, who am I? You asked me earlier, like, how do you want to introduce you? I'm like, who am I? What are the words that properly define what it is that I'm embodying at this point in my life? And oh man, I lost my train of thought again there.
That's okay. So do you not have mom guilt then? Because one of the things you said is like, yeah, you don't want to feel bad in your motherhood, but I think a lot of us do experience mom guilt. Is that not something you generally experience?
No.
And so how do you avoid it? Tell us how, Angel, and let
How do you avoid? Yeah, Mom, I mean, I'm familiar with the phrase. I don't live under a rock entirely, although I do like to play with them. Uh, could you describe in some different words what mom guilt is, at least for you?
yeah. For it can be, oh my goodness, so many different things. Basically, any time that I feel like maybe I did miss the mark on how I showed up for my daughter in a certain situation, or maybe I did lose my temper, or maybe I prioritize myself over them and I can feel that that impacted them, or I can feel that it affected them in some way. So it's like basically anything that's associated with my kids that I feel unsettled about. Like, and a lot of times it is my own actions. But other times it's just, I don't know, not so much associated, sometimes associated with worry, like worry about, I did this, how's that going to impact them?
Mhm.
And carrying all that. It's just this weight of like, I am responsible for these children. I am responsible for the adults that they become. I am responsible for their childhood experience and not creating trauma for them. And so that's heavy. That's like a big weight that I think a lot of us carry.
Okay. That's too much responsibility.
Yeah, isn't that motherhood?
Not.
Watch.
No, it's not. That's what I'm here to do. People, I know my husband is, I'm sorry, keep going back from him. He's like on my shoulder right now. He's so excited for this podcast. He's like, I'm going to share it with every mother that I know, because he wants families to have what we have. And that's too much responsibility. I think if we could play around in the arena just for a moment of not having this societally implanted mom guilt concept, like just pretend that it's not there. Pretend that it's not a hashtag. Pretend that it's not on coffee mugs and all this other stuff. And it comes back to you. You are not responsible for your children. You are responsible for who you are with your children.
Mm, I like that. So what if you're not proud of who you were in a moment? Like, and that was
But
so one thing. Go ahead.
yeah, so I paused there just so it could sink in, because I feel like people are gonna hear that and say like, what do you mean I'm not responsible for my children? You're responsible for who you are with your children. And yes, I don't mean like, don't take care of them, don't let them run around with knives. Like, you are responsible for their safety as children, and like all these other things. What I mean, like the grand concepts of I'm responsible for who they become. That is not your responsibility. It's your responsibility is who you are with them. They get to choose. And that's a scary thing. It's like, well, I can't let them choose. They're going to choose candy. I promise you, my children have options that other children would be like, oh my God. And they would probably gorge on the ice cream and the candy. But I've never taken the choice away from them. My children have always had the choice. And I live in an option. Well, you can have that if you want to, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to choose this. And why? I'm choosing to eat this for breakfast. And my daughter sometimes has ice cream for breakfast, to be honest. If she's like, but I want it, I'm like, okay, go for it. And then 20 minutes later, when she's like, I don't feel so good, can I have some of what you're eating? I'm like, yeah. But she's learning that on her own. She's not doing it because I was a dictator in the family who told her what to eat and what to do and how to do it, because she's not learning anything. She's not getting to experience her life. And yeah, she got a little bit sick. Is there a line there? For sure. I'm gonna go outside and play with machetes. No, but like, I don't have machetes in the house. I don't even know why that came up, but just so you know, that's not hey, uh, it's giving them the power of choice. Because I know you as a coach, I know you as a woman, what you're coming back to now is owning your choice, like coming into how do I make empowered choices? How do we come back to this place where we're making empowered choices, where I'm choosing from a place of alignment with me and what I want? Because we weren't given that, but we're also not giving it to our children. Most people aren't. I am, and if we don't allow them to practice now where it's safe, where they're in our homes and they're in our arms, and we can help to guide them. This is really the most powerful point. And again, that's why I'm not a fan of the public school system, because we give them away and then somebody else gets to have all this magic and they fuck it up. This is the magical time where they can practice, they can fail, they can fall, they can like largely screw it up, but we are here. And my daughter says she's never moving out of the house. Sometimes we say that. She's like, I'm not moving out of the house. I'm going to get married. I'm going to live here with you. And you know what? Honestly, if she wants to, we're just going to get a bigger house, and we could do a couple bigger properties. She can have a house over there. We'll have a house over here. I'm all for it. I'm not a fan of your children are 18. They're on their own, because I want my mommy and she ain't here, and I know that when my daughter's 40, she's going to want her mommy and I'm going to be there. It's giving them the choice. And then that does alleviate the mom guilt. I think that might be the magical point right there, is like, we have guilt because you're trying to take too much responsibility. I'm not saying don't be responsible for your kids, 100% do it, but how that responsibility is going to be unique for you and your family. But when you take on too much, like an example outside of motherhood that might help to illustrate would be my husband. When we first got married, he was a baby. Like, he was he was so young and so sweet and hadn't begun any kind of like self-reflection, no journey whatsoever. Like, this is not about him. Oh wait, taking too much responsibility. He's the example. Is I was taking too much responsibility for him. Like, he was being irresponsible with his spending. And I monitored it. I helicopter parented my husband, and I monitored his bank accounts, and I took his buying power away. We're like, you know what I mean? And it was an agreement we made. I didn't force it on him. He was like, you're right, I'm not responsible. So I just stepped in and I micromanaged every little thing that he was doing. And it blew up in our faces, I'll tell you that much. It didn't end well. But because he didn't know anything. Like, granted, you can go back to his parents, and like, they guided him and helped teach him some of these things. He didn't know them, but I wasn't helping him either. He wasn't learning anything. I was like, your parents should have taught you this. You didn't know. Well, they screwed it up. So I'm just going to step in and do what I need to do to make sure that like our family's okay. And it was all from fear of having the finances blown. And, you know, we had I was pregnant, all these things, right? But it was all from fear. And I didn't feel good about it. I felt guilty about it. And I was in my head every night, just like, oh my God, like, where is he? He said he's going out for this like work dinner, but like, what's he spending and where's he going? It was madness and it was chaos. And it was so toxic to our marriage as well. And I just had to cut the shit really with myself. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And it got messier before it got better for sure. But we're in a really good place now. And that's what we do to our kids is we look at them differently. We're like, but they're little and they're kids and they don't know any better. I get very fired, not triggered. I get very fired up passionately when people say like, but your kids don't know. Your kids don't know. They don't know any better. They don't know that yet. I'm like, well, because you're telling them that they're dumb. They know better than you do. Have you seen my kids? You should all see my children. Everybody come on out to my house and spend a day with me and my kids. They are wise, they're intelligent, they're intuitive, and they make beautiful conscious choices, and they make those conscious choices from a place of what they want. And we grew up in a world where you don't get to have what you want. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Don't get your hopes up. You know, we were prepared to fail. No one was like, well, what if it does work out? How are you going to feel then? Like, you know, that's not how it was. And I'm not raising my kids that way because that's not the way that I see the world. My husband's coming around to it now, but a lot of the time it's just like, you're crazy lady. Nobody lives in your world. I was like, but they will.
Well, and I think that's also tied to like us being unsure of ourselves and unsure of who we are, right? Because we are told how we have to be and how we should be showing up and what's right and what's wrong. And so we do lose that power of choice in who we are and the confidence in who we are because we're trying to like walk this straight and narrow line that maybe was never ours to walk in the first place.
It's a wild and crazy path, woman, and it is beautiful. I wanted to come back because I feel like I didn't really put that pin in that about that's the magic of dispelling this mom guilt in knowing what you're responsible for. Like getting really clear. I'm responsible for making sure my kids don't run with scissors and getting them fed and whatever your responsibility list is as a mother. We know these things that are required for our children's safety. And then there's like their physical safety, there's their emotional safety and well-being, there's their spiritual safety and well-being, and their mental safety and well-being. And they're all different buckets that just knowing what you're responsible for. Because again, we've been told and we've accepted that you are responsible for everything. And that's just it's not the case. I'm not responsible for how my children react. I'm not responsible for how my child feels, which is a big one. To know that you are not responsible for how your child feels.
Yeah.
And if you are like if you're abusing your child, again, there's gonna be people here like, well, if there's somebody out there, I always hear these crazy, like far off and well, if you're saying to me that if somebody's out there beating their child's not supposed to feel hurt by that. No, absolutely not. I'm talking about in the realm of healthy well-being, right? I've never condoned abuse to children, emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, anything. That's not okay. That's a dysfunction that we're trying to get out of here. So when a mother is happy and healthy and whole and well, and she's making choices from that place, not from dysfunctional places, then and only then do these systems work. Right. And that's where you come in with all of these people when you're beautiful coaching and helping them to get to a place where they know who they are and they're confident and solid in these places. Right. So it does sound like a really big jump to people. They're like, I don't understand how to get there. And there are some simple ways that I have found that have gotten myself here because I wasn't this. I was an anxious, chaotic, dysfunctional mess like my mother is. And then like that, I've chosen differently. It was 17 and it was 29 and it was 33 and it was 39. Again and again and again. When I know better, like when you know better, someone was just like, you're doing the best you can, but some people don't know any better. And they'll hear something and they're like, oh, but that sounds good. Like how many women and that I've experienced that they say, oh, I wish I could be like that, Angel. I wish I felt like that with my kids. Well, you know there's something better.
To those of you that tune in every single week, Thank you. I hope you already know just how much I love you. If you are just finding me or just stepping into my work, welcome. I am so happy that you are here. You can find more of me and my work on Instagram at Freely Sarah Heredia. I also am hosting a women's self-discovery retreat May 20th through 22nd at the most fabulous location here in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and I still have space for you to join me there. If you are looking for more consistent support and community, I want to tell you about my women's group, The Nest. We offer a monthly membership where you have access to the entire community of amazing women who are doing big things and crushing life, plus all the calls that we have throughout the month, or you can drop into any single call that we have that interests you. So you can find more on all of this and all of my work through the link in the show notes. But no matter how long you have been with me, thank you for being here, and truly, I would love to see more of you.